I want you to do something for me. Just for a second, close your eyes and visualize a stack of paper. Standard white A4 printer paper. A ream of it, like you'd buy at an office supply store, is about 2 inches thick. Got it.
Okay, yeah, I'm visualizing it. A ream of paper.
Now, I want you to stack that paper 3.5 million pages high. That is roughly, what is that? If a ream is 500 pages, we were talking about 7,000 reams.
So that stack would be taller than the Empire State Building.
Much taller. It's a skyscraper of paper.
A literal mountain of data.
That is physically what we are dealing with today. It is Wednesday, February 18th, 2026. And if you've been online, if you've turned on a TV, or if you've just felt a disturbance in the force over the last few weeks, you know exactly why we are staring at this mountain.
The Department of Justice finally pulled the trigger.
They did. The Epstein Files Transparency Act. We talked about this back in November when President Trump signed it into law.
Right. We knew it was coming.
We knew it was coming. We knew the release date was set for January 30th. But I have to be honest with you. I don't think anyone, not the journalists, not the victims' lawyers, and certainly not the Department of Justice itself, was ready for the sheer chaotic reality of what actually dropped.
It's a data dump of biblical proportions. And dump is really the operative word here, isn't it?
It really is.
We aren't talking about a neatly organized set of court exhibits with, sticky notes and highlights. This is not a curated Netflix documentary where the narrative is just spoon-fed to you.
No, this is the raw feed.
It's the raw feed of a global criminal enterprise. We're talking about 3.5 million pages of documents. But it's not just paper. It's 2,000 video files, 180,000 images.
Wow.
It covers everything. The Florida state cases in the mid-2000s, the Southern District of New York federal case, the raw FBI surveillance logs, grand jury presentations, and crucially, the Inspector General's review of his death.
And that is precisely why we waited. We could have. Well, we decided not to just jump on this on January 31st. We could have given you the hot takes, the, oh my God, look who was on flight log, page 402.
Which a lot of people did.
A lot of people did, and that's not what this is about. We wanted to take a couple weeks to actually swim through the swamp, to read the footnotes, and to see what floated to the surface once the initial shock wore off. Because the mission today isn't gossip.
No. If you want gossip, go to X or, whatever social media platform is trending this week. There is plenty of it there.
Exactly. The mission today is to map the machinery, because when you look at a data set this large, when you zoom out from the individual scandalous headlines, you stop seeing Jeffrey Epstein as just one, perverted millionaire living on an island. You start seeing the system that allowed him to exist.
That is the key takeaway for me, the system. You see the machinery of intelligence, the machinery of high finance, and the machinery of a justice system that, frankly, broke down completely.
Yeah.
It's a story about how wealth interacts with justice and how influence can bend reality.
So buckle up. We are going to wade into all of it.
Yeah.
We are going to look at the domestic power players. And yes, we will talk about the Trump and Clinton files in detail.
We have to.
We are going to look at the international spiderweb that somehow connects a British royal to Vladimir Putin via a Norwegian prime minister, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say out loud.
It sounds like a bad spy novel, doesn't it?
It really, really does. And we are going to break down the redaction disaster, which I think is the biggest underreported scandal of the last 2 weeks.
Oh, absolutely.
But first, let's start with the dump itself, because when the DOJ says they erred on the side of over-collecting, that sounds like bureaucratic speak. What does that actually mean for the person trying to read these files?
It means they open the floodgates. Usually in a legal release or a FOIA request, you get what are called responsive documents.
Right, the stuff that's actually relevant.
Exactly. Things that are verified, relevant, and vetted. Here, because the Transparency Act was written so broadly, the DOJ essentially took the entire hard drive of the FBI investigation and just hit print.
So this includes the junk.
It includes everything, and this is a crucial distinction for everyone listening. Included in this dump are thousands of tips sent to the FBI by the general public.
Okay, let's unpack that. So if I was a conspiracy theorist in 2019, and I sent an email to the FBI saying, I saw Jeffrey Epstein at a Starbucks in Ohio and he had laser eyes, that email is in this pile.
If an agent logged it into the file, then yes, it is in this pile. And the DOJ warned us about this explicitly. They noted that this production includes fake or falsely submitted claims.
Right.
They specifically flagged a batch of sensationalist claims made against President Trump right before the 2020 election.
Which explains why the internet is on fire with conspiracy theories right now.
Yeah.
People are finding these raw tips, which look like official FBI documents, because they are printed on FBI forms.
Of course.
And they're treating them like verified evidence.
Exactly. It's a needle in a haystack, but the haystack is made of 3.5 million needles, and half of them are rusty and fake. It requires a tremendous amount of media literacy to parse this out.
So you have to check the source of the document.
You have to. Is this an FBI 302 form, which is an interview summary conducted by an agent, or is this an unverified tip from a hotline?
That distinction is everything.
It is. But amidst all that junk, there is real hard evidence. There are call logs, bank transfer records, and flight manifests that have never been seen before.
Which brings us to the first major failure of this release.
Yeah.
We have to talk about the redactions. Or, I guess, the lack of them.
This makes my blood boil, truly. As someone who believes in the justice system, seeing this failure is it's heartbreaking.
I think it should make everyone's blood boil. The Epstein Files Transparency Act had one primary ethical mandate. Release the files, but protect the victims.
Right. Protect the Jane Does. Protect the women who were abused as minors and have spent the last 20 years trying to rebuild their lives in anonymity.
These are women who have jobs, families, children.
They were promised confidentiality.
So how did that go?
It was a catastrophic failure, a bureaucratic failure of the highest order. The Department of Justice assigned 500 attorneys and reviewers to this task.
500. Their job was to go line by line and black out the names and identifying details of the survivors.
And yet, within hours of the release on January 30th, we had names popping up on forums.
Not just popping up. We had full exposure. I mean, legal experts are baffled. You have attorneys like Brittany Henderson and Brad Edwards.
People who have been fighting for these women for decades.
For decades. They immediately had to file emergency motions to pull the site down.
Because they were finding their clients' names.
They were finding their clients' names, their dates of birth, sometimes their addresses. In some documents, a name would be redacted in the first paragraph, and then 3 sentences later, it's there in plain text.
But how does that happen with 500 lawyers? Is it just software? It's likely a mix of human error and software reliance. You know how find and replace works. If you spell a name slightly differently, or if it's a handwritten note that the OCR, the optical character recognition, didn't catch, it slips through.
But the scale of it just seems...
The scale is the issue, and the DOJ claimed a 0.1% error rate.
Which sounds low.
Yeah.
If you're a statistician.
Mathematically, sure. In 3.5 million pages, 0.1% is a small fraction. But human lives aren't math. If that 0.1% unmasks a trafficking survivor to the entire internet, the failure is 100% for that person. The damage is done instantly.
Yeah. You can't put the genie back in the bottle once it's on the dark web.
You can't.
There was also this really disturbing detail about the photographs. I saw this analysis on a few legal blogs, and it really, really stuck with me.
The gendered redaction issue.
Yeah. Explain that. Because it feels like a metaphor for the whole case.
It really does.
Yeah.
So there are roughly 180,000 images in this dump. Photos from the island, photos from the New York mansion, surveillance stills. Observers started noticing a pattern. Often you'd have a photo of a party or a gathering. The faces of the men in the background staff, potential witnesses, wealthy guests, were often blurred or redacted.
Okay, so they are protecting the privacy of the bystanders. That makes some sense.
Theoretically. But the women, the potential victims, the young girls, their faces were often left visible, unredacted.
That feels, is that malicious? Or is it just gross negligence?
It feels like the system protecting the system. It highlights a complete lack of what we call victim-centered standard operating procedures. You can't just run an algorithm on a database this sensitive.
No.
You need human eyes that understand the context. You need a reviewer who looks at a photo and says, that is a teenage girl, we need to blur her face, rather than a reviewer who says, is this man a VIP who might sue us?
It's so heavy. It starts this whole release off on just a note of tragedy. We're trying to get justice, but in the process, the DOJ just re-victimized the very people at the heart of the case.
And that's the shadow hanging over this whole conversation. But we have the files. They're out. And inside that mess, there are names, real names of very powerful people. And we need to talk about them.
We do. And we need to be precise here. We aren't going to do the tabloid thing.
Very precise.
So, standard disclaimer. Being named in these files does not equal criminal guilt.
No.
Being in a contact book doesn't mean you committed a crime. Being on a flight log doesn't mean you knew what was happening in the back room.
Correct. It shows access, it shows proximity, it shows who is in the orbit, but guilt is a legal standard, and we need to respect that distinction.
So let's start with the domestic power players. And we have to start with the name that, according to the metadata, appears over 1,000 times in these documents. Donald Trump.
It's unavoidable. If you're searching the database, his name just lights up the board.
But appears can mean a lot of things. It can mean a news clipping about Trump was found in Epstein's safe. It can mean a message about him.
Exactly. And you have to remember the context. Trump and Epstein ran in the same circles for a long, long time. New York real estate, Palm Beach, social scene.
They were the two most famous men in Florida for a while.
Absolutely. So the files give us a very mixed picture, actually. It's not the smoking gun some people on the left wanted, and it's not the total exoneration the right wanted.
Let's look at the FBI summaries. There's a document detailing a call between Trump and the Palm Beach police chief, Michael Rader. This is back in the mid-2000s, right?
Right. This is pre-conviction. The first investigation is just heating up.
And what does it say?
According to the FBI summary, Trump calls Chief Rader, and he doesn't tell him to back off. He reportedly says, quote, "Thank goodness you're stopping him." And he specifically refers to Ghislaine Maxwell as evil.
Which is interesting,
Yeah.
because Maxwell was the social connector. She was the one dragging these billionaires into the web.
Mm-hmm.
If Trump clopped her as evil back in 2005 or 2006, that suggests he saw something he didn't like.
It counters the narrative that everyone was covering for Epstein. At that specific moment, Trump appeared to be cheering on the police. Then you have the testimony from Juan Alessi.
The house manager.
Right. Alessi ran the Palm Beach house. He saw everything. And he testified that while Trump came for dinner, he never stayed overnight. And crucially, Alessi stated Trump never received a massage.
Never received a massage. And in the context of the Epstein case, that is a loaded phrase.
It's everything.
The massage was the mechanism of abuse. That was the entry point for the crimes.
Precisely. It's a significant distinction. If you were just a dinner guest, you were in the orbit. If you were getting massages, you were in the operation. The evidence in this specific tranche puts Trump in the dining room, not the massage room.
But we also have to address the noise. We mentioned the fake tips earlier.
Yes. And this is where the Transparency Act gets so messy. There are documents in here, unverified tips submitted in 2020, that make wild accusations against Trump.
So these were submitted during an election year.
Exactly. And the DOJ note attached to them basically says, "We investigated this, it's baseless, but we are legally required to release it."
If those claims had any merit.
They would have been weaponized years ago. I mean, look at the political climate. If there was a shred of credible evidence in those specific tips, it would have been front page news in October 2020. The fact that it wasn't tells you what the DOJ thought of them.
So Trump is everywhere in the files, but the weight of the evidence points to a social relationship that's soured.
A relationship that's soured, and perhaps a recognition of the toxicity before others saw it.
Now let's pivot, because if the Trump files are a mixed bag, the Bill Clinton files seem stickier.
The timeline is the problem for Clinton. That's what it comes down to.
Break that down for us, okay?
Epstein pleads guilty in Florida in 2008. He goes to jail. He registers as a sex offender. The entire world knows what he is.
The open secret is no longer secret. It's a public record.
Right. So the defense for most of these guys is, I didn't know. I thought he was just a financier.
Yeah.
That excuse expires in 2008.
It's gone.
It's gone. But here we have an email from October 2009.
This is the Peggy Siegel email.
Peggy Siegel, the publicist, she's writing to Epstein. She says she was at a party at Ghislaine Maxwell's house, and she drops two names. She says, and this is a direct quote, Bill Clinton and Jeff Bezos were there.
2009.
Yeah.
At Ghislaine Maxwell's house.
A year after the conviction. It disputes the idea that everyone cut ties. You don't go to the co-conspirator's house for a party if you've cut ties.
No. And then there's the deposition from 2016. This was from the defamation suit, right?
Yes. And this is legally significant. Epstein was deposed. He was under oath. The lawyers asked him point blank, did Bill Clinton fly on your jet?
Yeah.
Did Bill Clinton visit your private island?
And Epstein said.
He pleaded the fifth.
He refused to answer to avoid self-incrimination.
Exactly. Now, in a criminal court, you are supposed to infer guilt from silence, but we aren't in a criminal court right now. We're looking at this historically. If the answer was no, he never went there, Epstein could have just said no. By invoking the fifth, he is essentially saying, answering this truthfully could expose me to criminal liability.
Which implies that the nature of the visit, or what happened during the visit, was criminal.
That is the logical inference. It doesn't prove it, but it certainly suggests it.
It's not just former presidents, though. This dump has implicated people currently sitting in seats of power. And this is where it gets uncomfortable for the current administration in Washington.
That's what makes this February 2026 release so volatile. We're looking at current government officials. Take Howard Lutnick, the current Commerce Secretary.
He's been in the news a lot lately. He's a major figure.
He is. He had previously claimed that he cut ties with Epstein back in 2005. That was the line, "I got out early."
A lot of people use that line.
They did. But these new documents show that he and his family visited Epstein's island for lunch in 2012.
2012. Again, post-conviction.
Exactly. It contradicts the public narrative of "I didn't know." It shows that even after Epstein was a registered sex offender, he was still considered socially acceptable enough by the business elite to take your family to lunch with him.
Wow.
Then you have Thomas Barrack, the ambassador to Turkey. The texts that were released show regular contact with Epstein all the way through 2017.
2017 is late. That's right before the Miami Herald series, right before Epstein was arrested again.
And it wasn't just social. Epstein was acting as a conduit. He was introducing Barrack to other heavy hitters, like Peter Thiel. It shows Epstein was still a power broker. He was toxic publicly, perhaps, but privately, he was still the guy who knew the guy.
And we can't skip Catherine Rumler. She was the White House counsel for President Obama.
This one is particularly uncomfortable because of the language used. There are emails from 2015 where she writes that she adores Epstein. She calls him like a brother.
Adores him.
Adores him. And they discuss arranging a White House tour for Woody Allen.
A White House tour, facilitated by a registered sex offender.
It just shows how permeable the membrane was between the legitimate world of politics and Epstein's world. Even Dr. Mehmet Oz, the CMS administrator, pops up in a transaction report showing Epstein paid for his travel in 2004.
It's everywhere. It's bipartisan. It's systemic.
And that's just the domestic side. When you zoom out, the map gets even scarier.
Right, okay. Yeah. The international spiderweb. Because Epstein wasn't just collecting American politicians. He was collecting the world.
No. And this is where the intelligence asset theories often gain traction. I mean, the files don't explicitly confirm that he was a spy, but look at the connections.
Let's start with the UK, Prince Andrew.
The Andrew saga continues. You'd think we knew everything, but this tranche included the release of photos they're disturbing. They show him crouching over a woman. It just visually reinforces the predatory nature of these gatherings.
There's more than just photos, right?
Oh, much more. The bigger story here is in the emails. They suggest that while he was serving as the UK's special trade envoy, he shared confidential information about trade and investment in Afghanistan and Southeast Asia with Epstein.
Hold on. You're saying he was sharing state secrets, or at least sensitive economic data.
It appears to be privileged information. The implication is that Epstein was using Andrew not just for social clout, but for economic intelligence.
Epstein was a traitor.
Exactly. Knowing where the UK government is going to invest in Afghanistan before the market knows, that is worth millions.
So Andrew was leaking to him.
It certainly looks that way. And it's serious enough that King Charles has issued a statement supporting a police probe. The royal family is usually very protective, but this might be the bridge too far.
And it's not just the royals. Peter Mandelson.
Lord Mandelson.
Ah.
A massive figure in British politics, former ambassador. The files include photos of him, well, in a state of undress.
Oh.
In a room with a woman.
And let me guess, it wasn't just about the photos.
No. Similar to Andrew, there are allegations in the emails that he shared confidential UK and EU financial info with Epstein.
Again, the mix of sexual compromise and information trading.
That is the pattern. Kompromat, leverage. You get someone in a compromising position, and suddenly they are much more willing to share a tip about interest rates or trade deals.
But the weirdest international connection, and the one that really made me do a double take, was Norway.
Thorbjørn Jagland. This is a wild one.
He was the former Prime Minister of Norway and, crucially, the chairman of the Nobel Peace Prize Committee.
Right. So what is he doing in the Epstein files?
I have no idea.
This is where it gets geopolitical. Emails reveal that Epstein enlisted him to set up meetings with Vladimir Putin and Sergei Lavrov.
Whoa, stop. Putin, the president of Russia.
Yes. Epstein was trying to pitch a new form of money to the Russians. He specifically instructed Jagland to tell Putin, "You and I are close."
You and I are close.
Oh.
Epstein and Putin.
Whether that meeting actually happened or not is unclear. But think about the implication here. Epstein felt comfortable using a former NATO country prime minister as his errand boy to reach the Kremlin.
It's mind-boggling. Why would Jagland do that? What was the leverage there?
That's the question. Was he charmed? Was he compromised? Or did he just think Epstein was some kind of genius financier? It just shows the level Epstein was operating at. He wasn't just a rich guy in Florida. He was conducting shadow diplomacy.
It's terrifying. And meanwhile, what's happening in France?
We're just getting started. Paris prosecutors opened 2 new probes, one into sex abuse, one financial. This focuses heavily on Jean-Luc Brunel, the French modeling agent who was essentially Epstein's pipeline for girls.
Brunel died in prison in 2022.
He did, but the files confirm his role. And now Jack Lang, the former culture minister, has resigned from the Arab World Institute after being linked to an offshore Epstein company.
It's just toppling dominoes all over the world.
It is, because the network was global.
Okay, so we've done the politicians, we've done the royals. Now we have to talk about the masters of the universe, the tech bros and the celebrities.
The intersection of culture, technology, and Epstein's brand. This is where he tried to launder his reputation through science and futurism.
And Elon Musk's name is in there.
It is. There are email exchanges from 2012. Epstein asks Musk about the wildest party on the island. And there's a weird mention of kung fu practice.
Kung fu.
It's a bizarre detail. Musk has issued a denial, of course. He stated he declined invitations to the island and that the emails could be misinterpreted. But it shows Epstein was aggressively courting the next generation of wealth.
He wasn't just sticking to the old guard.
No, he wanted the disruptors. He wanted the future.
And then there's Bill Gates. This one feels darker than just courting. This feels like a shakedown.
Much darker. This is a whole different level. The files include emails drafted by Epstein posing as an employee, which is a strange detail in itself, alleging that Gates had an affair with a Russian bridge player.
A bridge player.
Yeah.
Like the card game.
Yes. Apparently Gates is an avid bridge player. The implication in the emails is clear extortion. Epstein was essentially saying, I know about this affair, and implying he could leverage it.
This is the kompromat business model we talked about earlier.
This is the perfect example of it. Why did Epstein collect these people? Why did he fly them around? It wasn't just because he liked company. He was collecting leverage. If he knew Gates had an affair, he could ask Gates for a donation to a charity or an introduction to a scientist or a business deal.
It's predatory networking.
It's weaponized friendship.
The odd connections list is just... it's like a fever dream. Woody Allen complaining about not getting past White House security because of his rap sheet.
Which is just darkly ironic.
And Russell Wilson, the quarterback, emailing about buying Epstein's jet.
The Gulfstream 4. Yeah, that one seems to be a purely transactional inquiry, but it just shows how wide the net was cast. Anyone with money or fame was a target.
And Steve Bannon, what was that about?
That's a fascinating interview. Bannon was interviewing Epstein for a documentary. In the transcript, Bannon asks if Epstein is a Tier 1 offender.
And Epstein says,
It's chilling. He basically accepts the premise of being a monster, but tries to intellectualize it. It shows Bannon trying to understand the psychology of the man, perhaps for the film, but it also shows Epstein's narcissism. He loved being the subject of fascination. He didn't want to be hidden. He wanted to be studied.
Let's go deeper inside the operation. Because one of the most explosive things in this release isn't a document. It's a video.
The Sting video.
Describe this for us, because it sounds like something out of a bad movie.
It really does. It's 2009, Boca Raton, a hotel room. The FBI has set up a sting operation. The target is Alfredo Rodriguez, Epstein's butler.
And what is he selling?
The little black book, the holy grail of contacts. He's there to sell it for cash to an undercover agent. And he is incredibly candid. He thinks he's talking to a criminal buyer.
So what does he say?
He talks about the hanky-panky. He identifies Ghislaine Maxwell explicitly as the recruiter, and he names names. He mentions Ehud Barak, the former Israeli prime minister, and says powerful men could be brought down.
This was in 2009. The FBI had this video in 2009.
They did.
And yet Epstein walked free, mostly, for another decade.
That is the tragedy of this video. It confirms that law enforcement had a roadmap. They had an insider on tape explaining the hierarchy and the crimes, and still, the machine kept running.
It proves that the failure wasn't a lack of evidence.
It was a lack of will.
Which brings us to the end of Epstein's life, the death investigation.
Yeah, the files include the raw surveillance logs from the night of August 9, 2019, the night he died.
And there's this detail about the orange flash. This has been all over the internet.
It's become the focal point of a lot of scrutiny in the last 2 weeks. The logs describe a flash of orange moving up the stairs toward Epstein's locked tier.
So what was it?
Well, that depends on who you ask. The FBI log notes it as possibly an inmate. But the Inspector General's review concluded it was an officer carrying linens, orange linens.
An officer carrying linens in the middle of the night while the cameras malfunctioned and the guards fell asleep.
It feeds the skepticism, doesn't it? When you have a discrepancy like that, FBI says inmate, IG says linens. In a case this high profile, it fuels the narrative that we still don't know the whole truth.
It feels sloppy at best.
And a cover-up at worst.
It certainly doesn't feel like case closed.
No. And that brings us to Section 6, the justice system on trial. Because if this data dump proves anything, it proves that there are two systems of justice in this country.
We've heard that phrase a lot, two-tier justice.
Well, look at the 2007 Non-Prosecution Agreement, the NPA. The files give us more detail on the draft indictment from 2007.
The one that was never filed.
They had a 53-page indictment ready to go, 30 counts, sex trafficking, conspiracy. I mean, they had the goods. And instead, the U.S. attorney at the time, Alex Acosta, signed a secret deal.
Explain the secret deal, because this is the legal anomaly that haunts this entire case.
It's unprecedented. The deal not only gave Epstein a slap on the wrist, 13 months in a county jail with work release, which is absurd, but it granted immunity to any potential co-conspirators.
So it protected his whole network.
It essentially said, if you helped Epstein, you are safe forever. And they kept the deal secret from the victims, which was a direct violation of the Crime Victims' Rights Act.
That deal is the original sin of this whole saga.
It is. And it's why Ghislaine Maxwell's recent appeal failed. The Supreme Court, back in October 2025, refused to hear her case. She was trying to argue that the 2007 deal protected her, too.
She was saying, hey, I'm a co-conspirator, I have immunity.
Exactly. And the courts finally said no.
So she's still in prison.
She is, transferred to a low-security facility in Texas, but she's serving her 20 years.
But is 20 years for one woman enough when the UN is calling this a crime against humanity?
That was a powerful statement from the UN experts. They reviewed these files and said the systematic sexual abuse network revealed here may meet the threshold of crimes against humanity. They said, quote, no one is too wealthy or too powerful to be above the law.
But a lot of them seem to be. I mean, the DOJ Deputy AG, Todd Blanche, came out and said they don't expect more arrests directly from these files.
And that's the hard truth. The statute of limitations has run out on many of these crimes. The primary suspect is dead. The evidence is messy. Criminal prosecutions are difficult.
Which is why Chuck Schumer is proposing new legislation.
Yes, a bill to eliminate the federal statute of limitations for sex abuse and trafficking. It's a direct response to this. It's basically saying if we can't get them on the old crimes, we need to make sure future predators can't just run out the clock. It's about closing the loophole that allowed this to happen.
So here we are, 3.5 million pages later. We have names, we have photos, we have videos. We know who went to the island, we know who took the meetings.
And we know who looked the other way.
What is the takeaway here? For the person listening to this who just feels exhausted by it all, who feels like the rich always win.
It's easy to get lost in the celebrity bingo. Oh, did you see who was on the list? But the real story isn't the celebrities. It's the failure of institutions. The DOJ, the FBI, the foreign ministries, the banks, they all saw pieces of this. And for years, they let a predator operate in plain sight because he had money and he had connections.
It wasn't a secret. It was an open secret.
Exactly. And transparency, even messy, belated transparency like this, is the only disinfectant. We can't fix it if we don't look at it.
So we have 3.5 million pages of evidence. We have videos of the island. We have the names of the powerful. The DOJ says the review is over. But with the UN calling this a crime against humanity and that orange flash on the jail video still unexplained, does this feel like case closed to you? Or does it feel like we're just reaching the end of the beginning?
I think we both know the answer to that.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll be watching to see what happens next.